people think with that it's all really serious criminals and people who have committed very, very serious violent crimes. But in fact, I've spoken to so many people who have been detained in immigration detention and in prison under immigration powers, whose offences were non-violent. They were often committed when they were very young. They're completely changed people now, but they've still been detained indefinitely and sometimes deported. So I actually wanted to start off by just giving a couple of examples of cases of people I've interviewed recently. One of them was just last week, and it was often I come off the phone from interviews like this, like feeling angry, but I was just particularly fuming with the Home Office after I spoke to this man. It was for a piece that I'm working on about called Life After Deportation, so looking into people who have been deported from the UK and their situations now. And just a brief summary of his kind of situation. So he came to the UK as a child from Jamaica with his parents, went to school here and everything, was never in trouble with the police throughout his childhood. But when he was 19, he did something really silly. He hadn't passed his driving test yet, but he'd bought a car already, and he was so excited, so he went out and drove the car without his driving licence. Obviously a really stupid thing to do. And then police spotted him and tried to pull him over, but he panicked, he kept going, and for a few minutes it was kind of a bit of a car chase. Eventually they stopped him, he stopped, and they arrested him, and he said to me he immediately regretted what he'd done. He thought that was just so stupid, and he kind of accepted, I'm going to get in trouble for this and I'll be punished. And anyway, he went on to go to court and everything, and he was sentenced to 14 months in prison. And so at this point, he was 19. He was taken to Bullingdon prison initially, which is just a normal prison. And then, but within a few days, he was moved to Huntercombe prison, which is a prison that's only for foreign national offenders. I think there are only 2 of them in the country that are just for FNOs. And so at this point, he hadn't realised before that he would be a risk of deportation from committing this offence. But he said to me, that's when I found out that they were going to deport me. That's why they brought me here. It's a deportation prison. It's a place for foreign nationals. Everyone in there is stressed and depressed about the single fact that they might be deported away from their families. I was constantly afraid. And then he just went on to talk about how kind of grim things were in there. He just said, he gave me an example of apparently one of his fellow prisoners slit his throat, and because he was so depressed or distressed about being split from his daughter. And obviously everyone in this prison kind of knows that they're facing being removed from the country. So he ended up staying there for quite a long time, and so he was detained for his sentence, and then it continued. And then eventually I think he was released, but then detained again in immigration detention, and last year he was removed to Jamaica. And speaking to him now, he's just obviously he's in a really depressed state basically, and he's been stigmatised there in part because if there was a charter flight to Jamaica last year, and I can't remember which, I think it was the Home Secretary at the time, who told Parliament that it was all murderers and rapists essentially. So this guy said to me that in Jamaica everyone assumes that all of the deportees were murderers and rapists, so he's been treated like that, and no one's giving him a job, and he's just having an awful time, and he's got none of his relatives there. So it's just a really sad case. And he also spoke to me about the lack of legal advice when he was in Huntercombe prison, and he struggled to kind of fight his case in there because it was just very difficult to access any legal advice. So that's his case. And then there's just another quick one of a man who he's been fighting his asylum case for years. He has a British daughter, and he was locked in a combination of prison and immigration detention for an overall period of 4.5 years. And while going through the asylum process, he committed some minor offences, one of which was smashing a window, which he said he did while he was homeless on purpose, purely to be detained because he was in such an awful state. He was homeless and he just wanted a warm bed. But anyway, so because of the accumulation of various small offences he committed, none of which were violent, he ended up being threatened with deportation and detained for a very long period of time. He told me that he went to court without a solicitor around 20 times because of the lack of legal advice and lack of access to legal advice. And he said to me of being in prison and in immigration detention, you will never be okay when you go inside there, and even if you come out, you face deportation. It brings out hatred. It's a place where there's no one to talk to, no one to understand. People go to prison because they've done wrong, and they get sentenced for the wrong they've done and then let go. People like me get detained when they've done nothing wrong. Because I'm not English, I have to be locked up. What did I do? I've wasted years away from my daughter. My daughter never chose this. I never chose this. So many times I've tried to commit suicide because I'm tired, I can't live like this anymore. So I think that just shows, kind of highlights how awful it is to be in detention and what it does to someone's mental health.